I was involved in LGBT politics, from the early 70s in terms of being involved with the Gay Liberation Front, in terms of being a LGBT activist. And then when HIV came along, I think I actually ended up becoming an HIV activist. If you look at the early 80s, it was LGBT organisations such as London Gay Switchboard, London Lesbian and Gay Switchboard, now Switchboard, which actually provided the first community response to that, which is where I was working as a volunteer. So I think that I got involved very much in HIV activism, which actually was much broader than LGBT activism, because yes, it was gay men, but it was also, the first waves of people who got infected in this country, were gay men. Later on it was Black African women. Yes, incredible overlaps with, is it 3/4 of all, I think of a figure of 3/4 of all people living with HIV are living in Commonwealth countries. 3/4 of Commonwealth countries still have anti-LGBT laws. And that is something which still needs handling. And then looking at how the law treats people living with HIV, especially in terms of, non-disclosure, exposure, and alleged transmission, of HIV. Well, I've known National AIDS Trust since it started, and it's always been very interesting how NAT has provided a certain amount of leadership, and also been very receptive to the voices of community. It's very interesting last year to get involved with the community advisory group. And are there any activists HIV today particularly admire? I admire anybody, especially if they're not in the bubble of being in a big city, being quite well connected, being quite comfortable, as I am, who actually turns around and questions the standard of service that they're getting. Questions why they're seen last by their dentist. Questions why they are seen last when they're getting a COVID jab. I don't know, but I think all those small things happen, and I think that anybody who starts to question that and is an activist, and so I admire anybody who does that, and I think that we always look at activism as this big outward going thing, man the barricades, etc., etc., etc. But getting us on the face of the disability legislation in the early 90s was very much sitting down and working with others. It was working with others, and there were also, activists who were our friends within the health service, who did things within where they were placed or where they were situated, who would no more come out and, stand there on a placard than so I think, with a placard or frighten the horses than anything. So I think that there's always activism takes many forms. It's questioning, what is going on. So there's an awful lot. There is an awful lot of enacted stigma which happens. And that's discrimination, but there's an awful lot of stigma that goes underneath that. Sometimes it's a generational thing. Sometimes it's you put all the things in place which are around, teaching kids and others as they grow up around, being at least non-judgmental about exploring themselves, about being kind to other people, and you do all that. But it's also about people who are in those stigmatized groups. Actually, I think it's more useful in some ways to build their resilience, get them to know their rights, get them to be able to exercise their rights, right? And also to exercise their own feelings of self-worth, even when there is not something that you can necessarily have restitution about or take to court or things like that. And the biggest change that needs to happen is that we need to support people more in making people more resilient in their approach, knowing their rights, knowing what is wrong, and the biggest change needing to happen in that sense is being able to being able to support people when they actually know or feel that their rights are abrogated.